Hi, and welcome to this week's Stalking the Wild Autoharp. And we are going to talk about some bass string schedules on a Chromatic Autoharp or Prism in a few minutes. But before we get to that, I wanted to share with you something that I'm super excited about right now, and that is my Patreon page. If you're not familiar with Patreon, Patreon is a way for people to support creative artists in their endeavors. And unbeknownst to me, I have seemingly become an independent web video producer, making tutorial videos for autoharpists. Who would have thunk it? But it's true, and it's become a full-time job for me, along with teaching private lessons through Skype. Making these public lessons on YouTube has become a very engrossing thing, and I'm able to do it full-time now. And maybe you have been somebody who has benefited from these videos, gotten something out of them, and it's added to your playing. And that's what I love to do. And that's what's so important for us to do, is to play these acoustic instruments and get out, get away from the computer, get away from the TV set, and get out there with other folks and play some music on the back porch or at a festival or in your living room. Just play some music, and I like helping you do that. So I make no money from these videos that go on YouTube, and this is a way for you to give back to the process and help me keep doing these videos. I have tons and tons of ideas about where I want this to go, new technologies to teach with, and new types of videos that I want to start doing. I'm going to start teaching how to play certain songs, and I've got some surprises down the road too. Patreon.com/HalWeeks. If you go to my Patreon page, you can read about getting exclusive video footage, exclusive video lessons, things that you can't get here on YouTube, that only my patrons can get. If you kick in a few bucks a month towards supporting this YouTube show, really, we can keep doing this together. My website is halweeks.com. There's links there as well. But patreon.com/halweeks is where you can read all about how you can become a partner with me in Stalking the Wild Autoharp. So, without further ado, let's talk about autoharps. Now, I said that I was going to talk about bass string schedules, and this is something that applies in this case to chromatic autoharps, although we redo our bass strings when we set up a diatonic autoharp. This is about doing it on a chromatic to give your chromatic a fuller, deeper sound and get a more satisfying fullness out of a chromatic harp, which only has single string tuning. And so I wanted to talk about what I used to do with my standard chromatic. This is by no means a standard chromatic anymore, so it's not what I'm doing on this harp. But something that somebody told me to do, and that somebody was Julie Davis of Winfield fame. This was her suggestion, and I adopted it and started doing it about 30 years ago on my chromatic harps. And I tend to favor chromatic harp, so it gave my harp a bigger bass end in the keys that I like to play in. So I want to share that with you first. And this is going to involve changing 3 strings on your harp. You don't have to refelt at all, which is going to, this is going to rock your world here. You're going to say, Hal, you're just talking crazy now. But this is what I did. The bass strings on a standard chromatic autoharp, starting from the bottom, they go F, G, D, E. So what I am suggesting you do is you're going to take off that D string. You're going to take off that E string, which is strings 4 and 5. No, excuse me. F, G, C, D, E. Is that what I said? F, G, C, D, E. So strings 4 and 5. You're going to take those off, and you're going to put on strings that are double wound, low bass strings, and you're going to drop those strings a whole octave. This means a couple of things. It means now your harp goes down to low D, below your lowest F. And you've also got an E that's below, and that is going to beef up your A minor. It's going to beef up your D chord, your D minor, your G minor. It's going to beef up, well, you get the idea, okay? Then, and this is entirely optional, but I really loved it, count up to your A string. It should be string 9. Take that one off and drop that an octave. You could use a low G string. Put that G string on in there. Now, what the other thing that this means is that your bass strings are now out of order. And this is where people go, oh, I don't know if I'd like that. But here's the deal. You don't really need them in order, because are you playing melody down there? No, not really. Your thumb is kind of dragging along down there and striking low bass notes, and you're picking up bottom for your chords, but it's kind of striking where it may and adding bottom to it because of the fingerings that you're doing with your left hand. Okay, so the strings that are down here are not so much for melody as they are for bass and bottom in your chords. So this is why I started changing them, and I got a good solid A chord because I had a low E and a low A now. I got a good solid A minor, I got a good solid D minor because I had a low D and a low A. And all of a sudden I had much beefier bass, and I didn't have to re-felt my chord bars at all because they were already cut for those chords. Okay? What that meant is that people would look at my Autoharp and go, that's really weird, because my bass strings weren't in order and I had fatties on that were up a few strings, okay? And I've always been that way. I've been that way for 30 years, and I love it. And you will too, I guarantee. So give it a try. Here's the thing about adding fat strings to your harp. If your harp has fine tuners, I mean fine tuners of the normal variety, not Pete Daigle's fine tuners. Pete Daigle's fine tuners don't count in this, what I'm about to tell you. If you have the kind where there's a cam that comes off with an Allen screw and you have to thread the string through that fine tuner, if it's a low D string, it won't fit through that cam. And so you have to make that hole bigger. Here's how you do that. Get out your drill bits, take your cam, start passing drill bits through that hole that the string goes through, and get wider and fatter with each drill bit. Okay? You're not drilling yet, you're just pushing the bit through the hole to see if it'll fit. When you get to the first drill bit that won't go through the hole, you're going to put that drill bit into your drill, and you're going to drill out the hole on one cam for a low D, because that's the only way it'll fit through. And then you have to save that cam when you change your strings, remembering, hey, that's for my low D. The rest of the strings should go through. A low E, well, that's I'm saying you can use a low F string for that, and we already know the F string goes through that cam, so it shouldn't be a problem. All right, Now, I also recommend that you get correct strings for your harp. Go to Bob Lewis. He stocks correct strings and he can get them out to you fast. Some harps Tom Fladmark stocks, other ones he has to build for. He has to special make the string for when you're ordering singles like that. So Bob Lewis is really the fastest way to get them. The other thing that I want you to know about is what I'm doing currently on my harp. This harp, which is my standard chromatic, right now it's set up with regular chromatic buttons. This is not a prism setup. I've got my regular chord bars on here. But this is my chromatic, and once again, I've reordered the bass. Listen to my 5 bottom strings here. So my lowest string on my harp is number 5. This is different because my chromatic is not set up for the key of F at all. I don't have a B flat chord, okay? I don't have an F7. My harp is set up for keys of C, G, D, A, and E, okay? And so I've got a really fat, low E sound, and I've got great bass strings for the key of E, A, D, G, and C. Okay? They're all there, and they all have really good bass. So I'm going to share this tuning with you, okay? I'm going to read it to you right now. My low strings, going from the bottom up, are E, A, B, C, low D, E, and that's the E that's up an octave again from the low D, and then F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B, C, C sharp, on chromatically on the rest of the way up. Okay, so that little part of the video you can replay if you want to get that tuning. If you want to play, you have to be willing to drop your key of F, but you pick up key of E down here, okay? That's what I do on my prism. Because to make this a prism, I just change out the chord bars. Boom, it's a prism. But it's got good bass. That's in my C chord. That's in my G chord. Okay. My D chord has low D and low E, or low A. My A chord has low A and low E. And my low E has low E, A, E. And so my minors are supported too. So that is my introduction to changing out your bass strings. Remember, we set up our bass strings not based on how they come from the factory, but base it on the keys that you sing well in. And then change your bass strings so that you have the notes you need to really bottom out your chords. There's a couple of rules, okay? Rule number 1, try to put the root of the chord, like C, or well, like G and a G chord, like A and an A chord, in the bottom. If you can't get the root in the bottom, put the 5th in the bottom, okay? If you can't get either of those in the bottom 3 strings, try to put the 3rd, you can open up the bass 3rd of the chord to get a note in those bottom fatty strings, okay, to get it really, you know, get some bottom in it, preferably the root or the 5th. If you can't, try to put the 3rd there in the bass. Just don't put a 7th, in the bass, because that's going to sound a little funky. Okay, if you're cutting chords for a D7, don't put a C in the bass. Okay, so try to get strings open in the bottom 5 strings in every chord. Okay, the root, the 5th, or the 3rd if you have to do the 3rd. Okay, that's the basic rules. Another rule is get the right strings for your harp. My harp is a Daigle, and if you look at my strings, and I'm going to see if I can come in close here, if you look at my strings, you will see that the windings go all the way to the bridge, just about. Take a look at your harp. Do the windings go all the way to the bridge? Or, you know, 1/4 inch away, maybe 3/8 of an inch? That's good. Make sure that you have the right wound strings for your harp, because that's going to really improve the sound of the tone of the bass end of your harp, and you're going to get a much more satisfactory chromatic playing experience if you beef up your bass. Okay, now I realize I've been a little scattered with this video. I'm trying to get it all in, and I'm doing it off the top of my head and being kind of impromptu here, but I want you to be able to have this information. So replay this video. If you're interested in doing this, replay it so that you get all the essential parts of it. You can convert a standard chromatic tuning by dropping 2 or 3 strings in the bass and get a much beefier, fuller sound from your current chromatic without even changing the felts. Okay, now I realize this was not a prism issue, and I was doing a prism series, so we're going to get back to that very soon. However, it is a chromatic issue, and the prism is built on a chromatic Autoharp body and string set. So in that regard, it is a prism issue. Okay, anyway, I'm Hal Weeks. This is Stalking the Wild Autoharp, which is going to be carried into the future with your support, and I need your support to help me to keep doing this, because I make no money off of these videos. Here's your opportunity. Hal Weeks, patreon.com/Hal Weeks. Give a few bucks a month. That will help me immeasurably to make the goals that I need to make. My camera is breaking down and I need to upgrade it, and I have other editing needs and sound needs that I need to achieve to help me get there, and you can read all about that on Patreon. Okay, my website is halweeks.com. I offer private lessons online through Skype that you can sign up for. You can find out about that through my website, halweeks.com. Thanks for watching, and check out my Patreon page, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.